Well, Sash, do you want to get started?
Yep, I'll go ahead and get started. Thank you, Richard, for all of the introductions. Thank you, everybody, for taking time out of your day to join us for this Ideate Software online user group. And this one, of course, is dedicated for the APAC region, although Radu is West Coast as well as I am. So why not show up today at 5 o'clock as well? You can also come to tomorrow's at 9 a.m. On the West Coast. So again, thank you, everybody, for attending today. And let's go ahead and have a look here at today's agenda. So for today's agenda, we're going to be just getting some kind of general organizational items kind of out of the way. And then we're going to let Tang Mingjing from, he's actually going to do the first presentation on Ideate sheet creation. Then we're going to have Holger de Groot do some presentations on some auditing and viewport layout tips. So definitely want to make sure we pay close attention to that one as well. And then we do have some questions that came in during the registration process. And we want to go ahead and answer a couple of those questions. So Richard and I are actually going to be doing a couple of quick live demonstrations using a couple of our products to answer those questions. And then we'll also see if there are other questions that we can review. And we'll even open it up for discussion. And so when we do open up for discussion, we'll go ahead and give people the ability to unmute themselves if they want to ask it aloud. But as Richard mentioned earlier, feel free to also ask a question by typing in the questions panel. So if you have anything during this presentation, whether it's for us, whether for Tang or Holger, let us know. We'll be more than happy to do this. So here's that questions panel information. So again, feel free to type in at any point in time. If you do prefer to speak, let us know. And don't be shy. I know sometimes it's hard to put people on the spot, but we're all in this together. This is kind of a user group situation here. So feel free, to ask some questions. And of course, mute yourself unless you want to speak. That way we don't hear a whole bunch of background information or background noise. All right. So
yeah, I think Sash, I think everyone's muted on the webinar, okay. So they shouldn't have to worry about that.
Not at this moment, and then we'll open it up here in a bit when we get to the part where we can kind of make it an open forum. Yeah, so here are today's presenters. So again, we have Tang Mingjing from Sabrana Jurong and Holger de Groot from Modmation Consulting. And then, of course, myself and Richard Taylor from Ideate Software. And we're going to wait for our portion here kind of at the end. We want to definitely let Tang and Holger really shine today and show their presentations. All right, let's go ahead and get started, shall we? All right, so before we get into the first two presentations, it'd be good to kind of know where everybody is coming in from. So what I'm going to do here is launch the first poll. And it should be on your screen right now. So go ahead and take a moment and let us know where you're sitting today. Where are you based out of right now? We'd love to know where everybody's coming in from. And then I'll go ahead and close this one out and show the results. We're almost there. We're about 93% of the attendees have weighed in on this. And it doesn't look like we're going to get any more, so I'm going to go ahead and close it, and then I'm going to go ahead and share the results. And you should see the results on your screen. It looks like about 85% are from Australia and New Zealand, about 8% from Singapore, Philippines area, and 8% are other. And feel free, if you want to type in the questions panel, especially those from the other regions, let us know where you're coming in from. All right, I'm going to go ahead and hide that, and let's go ahead and move on. All right, so first up is Tang. As we mentioned earlier, Tang is the Executive BIM Manager from Sabrana Jurong. And I'm going to go ahead and let Tang take the floor here and go ahead and present his portion of this presentation. Tang, it's all you.
Okay, good morning, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Okay, I'm Tang. I'm the BIM Manager from Sabrana Jurong Architect Department. Okay, now I'm in Singapore. So today my case study is about the problem is the sheet creation, because I think most of the Revit user, they know the sheet creation is is very time consuming, and when you need to create a lot of sheets, okay, it may take you more than a day. Some project we take it even 1 week to finish it a few years ago. So when we use the BIM link, so the solution is we can use the Excel to import the data into BIM. So later I will show you step by step, then we can finish this job in a few minutes only. Okay, next. Next slide. Okay, so yes, this is the introduction for it. So for the sheet in Revit, maybe somebody, if the person not use Revit, they don't know what is sheet. But actually, in simple, it's a working place where to place title, block, and also the views. Normally, we can consider one sheet would be printed as one completed drawing. So as most of the BIM projects are required to print to and also extract the drawing from BIM model, so the sheet creation is essential for most of BIM projects. In the conventional way, the BIM modeler may need to create sheets in Revit and type in the sheet information manually one by one. So from what our previous project, if we do it manually, it may take allow 3 to 5 minutes to finish a sheet. So in the following page, you will find that it's quite easy to create more than 300 sheets in about 3 minutes by using the BIM link. Okay, next. Then the step 1 is that we need to create the BIM link with the necessary property. So you can see the example here. So different project, you may have different parameter for the sheet. So you may based on your parameter create this the BIM link, and if available, you can import the BIM link template from your previous project. Then this step maybe only take you about 30 minutes. Next. Okay, so the second step, we need to export the data to Excel. And then after that, we can ask somebody to fill in the information. So in this step, like my company, our workflow is like that. We export the Excel, export the data to the Excel. Then we can let person, even they don't know BIM, or they don't know to use Revit or AutoCAD, they can still do this work. Okay, they just need to input the necessary information. So after they finish the inputting, then we can import back to Revit. So this one, okay, we can go to the next slide. Yes, so you can see on the left, you can see you just need to allow 1 minute. We can import back all the data into Revit. For this step, there actually is an option. If when we export the data to Excel, if we have the information for title block, then you even can skip my step 4. But in my case, because the people involved in this process, some people, they are not the BIM user, means they even don't know what is Revit, what is the title block family type. So that's why in my case, I take out the title block column. So let all the information is the one is the necessary for the designer. Okay, so can we go to next slide? Then finally the step 4 is that we can create a new sheet and then select the title block. Then this step only need to take around 1 minute. Okay, actually it's very simple. So totally only 4 steps only. Okay, next slide. Then you can see we can done the more than 300 sheets in around 3 minutes only. Then after we done it, you can see the left-hand side, the project browser looks quite in order because all the data from the Excel are accurate. You can see also the in the middle, the title block, all the drawing number, all the revision, and who is the designer, who is the checker, and then the day of issuing, all are accurate. Then you can see the right hand side. If you prettify in Revit, then you can get the drawing schedule automatically. All this kind of thing, you can do it in around 3 to 5 minutes only. Okay, next slide. Then this is a summary. You can see list chart. So it compare the conventional way and automation way. So conventional way means we need to manually input the information in Revit. Then automation way is that we can use the beam link, okay, to do it in one time. So you can see the total time to create the sheets. We can reduce the timing from 1,400 plus minutes to around 3 minutes only. Okay, so like this use case, actually, we also can use for the other Revit project very directly. This workflow, I think, can be used most of the project. I think that's all my presentation. Okay, thank you.
Tang, that was really fantastic. You know, this is actually a workflow that I tend to demonstrate a lot when I show people the basics of using Ideate BIMlink, just because this is actually my preferred workflow for creating sheets. And part of the reason why is you can create so many sheets really quickly. And I really like the demo, especially with these large, complicated projects that you're working on. In this case, 361 sheets, which is, a good sized project. And I like it too, because, once you import that information, whether you do them as placeholder sheets, which is kind of what your slide 3, or slide 4, I guess, was kind of what it was, or you want to go ahead and assign it a title block. It's a really great workflow. And what's great is you could re-export that data again. Like, for example, I'm just going to back up if you don't mind and just kind of show the audience. But, all this information here that's, filled in, if Tang were to go back a little bit and, take this information that's now in the Revit model after bringing it in and take it back out to Excel, if you needed to make any changes to this existing information, it's now here. Really, the only difference is these element ID numbers will now be filled in, because we ended up creating those elements for you. So what a great way to save a lot of information and come back and make changes if need be. So really appreciate you showing that. And if you in the audience, have used BIMlink and Excel before to create sheets, please let us know, and let us know, in the chat, in the questions panel, if it saved you time. Would really like to know.
And Tang, this is Richard. I have a question for you. How is the project browser organized? Is it organized based on a particular shared or project parameter?
By project parameter, because this is our company standard. You can see maybe the second column there, IFC parameter. Yes, I think this one is the different project in our company. If they have different requirement from the client, we may change this one. But the mindset is there.
That's nice. And the great thing about it is if you include those shared parameters or whatever you're organizing that by, automatically it will come in correctly into with the project browser organization, whatever you've set it for, which is nice.
Yes.
Yeah,
that's great example. I think you have a question, don't you, Sash?
Let's see here from Radu. Yeah, production. Yeah, so Radu mentioned here production capacity is one of the main reasons for us to look into BIMlink. Yeah, and the whole package. So that's it, right? So, once you get these setups put together. And like what Tang mentioned, once he even set it up in one project, he's got a convention going, right? And if you have that set up in another project, you could literally import that Excel file and create those sheets, once again. So this is excellent. Thank you, Tang. Appreciate it.
Yes,
thank you.
All right. There it is. There's the thank you. Okay. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to launch another poll here for the audience. So give me one moment while I bring it up. So here's the deal. You just saw creating sheets with Ideate BIMlink. What other BIMlink creation tasks have you used? So it should be up on your screen. So go ahead and take a moment and let us know what other creation tasks have you used. And you can select more than one option here. But let's see what people have used BIMlink for in terms of creation. For some of you, you may be new to this, so you may not have done any of these tasks yet. But let's go ahead and find out from you guys what else you've done. We have about 20% of the audience has weighed in. Now, yep. All right, it's slowly creeping up now. Perfect. And we're about half voted. And we realize we don't have an other in here. So if you want to go ahead and type in the questions panel, let us know what else you use BIMlink for. That'd be great. Especially if you don't see it on this list. We'd love to know what people are using BIMlink for. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and close this out. And then I'm going to share the results with everybody. So it looks like a lot of people have either created or modified sheet data, which is, a big use case, right? So we saw, from Tang's presentation here, a lot of sheet creation and, of course, using a lot of modifications afterwards. Yeah, creating rooms, spaces, areas is another great use of BIMlink. If you haven't used BIMlink for these tasks before, you should definitely take a look at doing that. I used to do a lot of demonstrations on doing room programming, just as an example, and then having all that data, and then now wanting to create those rooms. And they're not placed yet, but have the room information, the name, the number, all that information ready to go, so you can place those rooms and not have to fill in the information afterwards. Is great. Yeah, if you weren't aware, you can create new family types. Placing sheets and rooms, that's kind of an instance-based workflow. But did you know you can actually take your family type information out to Excel and actually create new types? So if you needed to create new, let's say, mechanical equipment types, or you needed to create some new furniture types, or whatever it may be, you can actually use BIMlink to help you with that. And then in some cases, you can actually create new instances. We don't do instances for everything. And there's a lot of reasons why. Number one is we'd like to understand from people, what kind of instances do you want to place with BIMlink? And some instances have other types of challenges, whether they're wall host or they have some sort of host. How do we define how those instances get placed? By the way, if you do want to actually use BIMlink to place instances and you can't do it right now, let us know how you'd like to achieve that using BIMlink. We'll be more than happy to take a look at that. All right. Well, thank you. Go ahead, Richard.
One more, plug. Since we're talking, it's not the exact same thing, but since we're talking about instances and creating points, I just published a blog article today about coordinate data with Ideate BIMlink, and so it explains how we actually sort of define the X, Y, and Z coordinates for points like family insertion points, but also for room bounding elements, for grids that may have a linear length as well as angle. So there's a lot of detailed information about how Ideate BIMlink sort of manages sort of points and sort of point data.
Yeah, that's a really good one, Richard. Yeah, especially with like point data. It's one thing where you can actually use BIMlink to get kind of the insertion point, information, that X, Y, Z, information. But, if you have a real specific location within a family that you'd like to extract that data with, you can actually place a point inside of that family and nest it. And then, like Richard said, you can use BIMlink to actually report that information, which is really, really helpful, especially for those that are out in the field doing construction and you're placing things like, support hangers for ductwork and piping. That's really, really helpful. All right. Next is Holger de Groot. He's CEO and founder of Modmation. And I'm going to go ahead. Holger's got kind of two parts to this. And so we're going to let Holger talk about both parts here. So Holger, I'm going to let you go ahead and give the demonstration or talk about both, and I'll advance the slides like we did.
Yeah, and Holger just turned on his camera so you can see him.
Yep.
Good. Thanks for having me, first of all. And thanks everyone for joining us today. So I basically have two tips and tricks I'd like to share with you. So the first one we're looking at is basically you have already placed all your details on a sheet. You arranged them nicely, but now you have the problem because you didn't place them in the right order that you have to renumber them. And the issue in Revit is if you have it out of the box, you cannot give the same number to more than one detail. So renumbering viewports with Ideate App's renumbering tool will help you to streamline this and to automate this process to be, to work faster instead of harder. Okay, if you can click. So here we have an example of a sheet. The details have been placed on the sheet, and as you can see, they're not in order. It starts with number 8, 7, and so on. And number 1 is already taken on the right. So now we want to renumber them to get them into the right order. One click, please. So using Ideate Software, you go to the Ideate Software link on the top, and then within the ribbon, you click on the renumber tool to start this process. So click again, please. Perfect. So the tool starts, and then you basically have to set up the tool the way you want to place the orders. So you can see I want to start with number 1. I can select the method I want to use to reorder my details, and then I'm starting by clicking on the first element. Click again, please. So you see I'm clicking on the first detail, and it instantly changes the number. And previously, the 4th detail on the right, which was number 1, is now swapping the number. So that's number 8 now. And by doing that, it avoids the double numbering and basically where Revit would block me to place a number that has already been taken. And that's how I move on. So please, again, take another click. So you can see when I click on number 2, or the second, it will change this to number 2, and so on. So while I'm clicking, and please click again for the next slide. And while I'm clicking, you can see how the viewpoints changing to the right numbers. If they already have the right number, of course, they will keep it, but you still have to click on it to keep the sequence. So for example, if detail number 3 would have been already number 3 and you don't click on it, it will then basically give number 3 to the next one. So really keep in mind that you have to keep the sequence as you click. One click again for the next slide. So now you can see I basically went through all the details just by clicking on each detail and the number swap, and now I have it all nicely in order. And that is less than a minute to get this done. If I would have done that without Ideate, doing it manually, I basically have to renumber first all the details so I don't have numbers doubled up, and then I could bring it in order, which takes me much longer, would take more time. And if you think about multiple sheets, such process can take very long time. Okay, click again, please. And that, I think, yeah, that brings already to the end for the first tips and tricks. So the second that I would like to share with you is all about once you have already some elements created, you maybe already have a model or you have received the model, and you want to make sure the model has a certain quality before you start using it. Or the other way around, you want to make sure your model has a certain level of quality before you hand it over to your consultant, client, or whoever is in need to work with your model. So the situation we have right now is we have a models where warnings haven't been cleaned up, they haven't been checked for a long time, and if that is the case, you can quickly messing up warnings about 400, 700, or even more than 1,000 warnings in your model. And if you know Revit, the more warnings you have, the more it has an effect on its performance. So your model gets slower, Revit gets slower, Revit can even get more unstable, can basically crash and so on. And that's something you want to avoid. So the problem is now that your model is slow because Revit keeps checking if these have been fixed. And our solution is to check the quality of those warnings using Ideate Explorer. So in general, if you don't have Ideate, what you could do is you go to the Manage board, and then under Warnings, if you click there, next slide, please, then you get a list of all the warnings in the view in the dialog box. So here, that's what we see. So this is example in Revit 2019. It's very similar in 2021, and I'm sure it won't change in the next version. So you have a list of all the warnings that exist in this model. But this list of warnings doesn't come with any rating. You have no idea which warning is causing the most issue and which warnings are basically very small ones, can be easily fixed or can even be ignored. By ignoring, what I mean is basically getting a model warning free is a very hard task. Sometimes it's just not possible. So for us, it's important to focus on those warnings that actually create issues and getting those fixed first before we go to the minor warnings. And that's where Ideate Explorer is very helpful. Next slide, please. Here we go. So you go to the Ideate Software tab, and then in there you start the Explorer tool. And that tool, when the dialog box opens, next click please, you already get a list of all the warnings pre-ordered. So what we can see here, we have 0 warnings with the red light. So usually if you have really critical warnings, they will have a red circle or red square there. These are the warnings you want to take care of first. So this model, we don't have red ones. We have yellow ones and green ones. So we'll start fixing the yellow ones first, as these have the highest priority in my list. So now what we see here, for example, is we have 2 warnings, category yellow, where the tag is outside of its area, of the room or space. So we want to make sure that these tags are within the room so they can actually be displayed. And that's very simple. So I'm just going to that warning, as you can see, the blue one, and I just double click on it. Next slide, please. And that will instantly open a view where I can see this room where this tag is placed. And you can see this tag is not within the room boundaries. Therefore, I have double question marks. So now I can just move it inside the room, and then the tag will display the information as I need it. And you can see that by just going this way, it's very simple to go that particular view. Doing this without the Ideate Explorer would take much more time. Click again, please. And also, if I receive a model and I see certain warnings that I like to get fixed, but I don't want to fix it because I just received this model as a reference, I'm not responsible for it, or I have not even access to the model as from an editor point of view, then at least I can use the ID that you see in the green circle, and then I can communicate that ID with the party that created this model or was responsible for this error or this warning, not error, warning. So I can communicate this ID, and if that party doesn't have Ideate Explorer, they can use the ID to find this element and to fix it. And that's quite simple. If you click again for the next slide, please. So if they don't have Ideate Explorer, of course, first of all, I would strongly recommend to get it. But if they don't have it, well, then they just go to the Manage tab and then selecting by ID element here on the top right. And then they just type in the ID that I communicated with them, click on Show, and then they can fix it themselves. But yes, you can see this already takes more time than just going to the Ideate Explorer toolbar, going to the particular warning, double-clicking, fixing, and so on, and I can just go through my list, rather than figuring out what is the ID of the element, typing it here manually, then showing it, then fixing it, and trying to solve it this way. It's possible, but it takes much more time. So using Ideate Explorer for the warning reviews and also to get a better understanding of the quality of the models we publish and the models we receive is helping us a lot, and it's also helping us to streamline this process by partially automating the process. So again, we try to work smarter by using Ideate Software rather than working harder. And I think that is the last slide.
That was excellent. Yeah, really appreciate those 2 demonstrations using 2 completely different products. And yeah, one of the challenges that I've always run into with Viewports, especially going back to kind of your first one, is when we didn't have a tool like Ideate renumber, and Holger, you've probably done this too, where you go to change a number, another one to a number 1, and you can't, and it says that, you know, enter a unique number. So I've gone in and put like the letter X, you know, after each one of those, and then I can come back and kind of renumber. And, you know, as kind of as Holger was kind of showing through his slides, you don't have to do any of that. We handle all of that kind of in the background so quickly you don't even see any of those changes happen. And just a little, you know, tip, although it's probably not used as often, you could even actually use the detail line method where renumber allows you to kind of renumber elements along a path. And I've seen people actually draw those paths through their details, and then they hide those in that view. So you could actually, you know, use the reveal hidden elements to show your path lines if you needed to, you know, renumber your details for some reason. But using the pick method is just as easy and just as fast. So that was really an excellent presentation. So thank you so much.
Welcome.
All right. Let's go ahead and launch another poll here because this goes in line with Holger's presentation here. But I would like to know, how often do you or your company audit your Revit projects? So let's go ahead and launch. And by the way, this doesn't have to be related to Ideate Software. You know, if you're using other software or doing things manually, would really like to know, how often are you actually looking for warnings? How often are you looking for groups, in-place families, you know, these kinds of things? This is really important, right? Model health is a big deal, and it's been a big conversation for a while in the Revit community. But would love to know, you know, how often are you guys doing it? And it's okay if you're not doing it. This is the place that you can let us know that you're not doing it. But let's go ahead and just see what everybody's saying here. We're about 2/3 have weighed in on this. Would love to hear from everybody if possible. So we'll close the poll in about 15 seconds. Looks like about 65% of the people have weighed in. But yeah, would love to know. I love this one. All right, I'm going to go ahead and close the poll, and I'm going to share the results with everybody. So it looks like a majority of the folks that did weigh in are actually doing it weekly, which is really what we recommend, right? If you don't do it weekly and you start doing it, you know, bi-weekly or every so often, I think the issues will compound themselves, right? And addressing warnings is never fun, but if you can address them daily or weekly, then hopefully they won't pile up on you and become a bigger health issue. And, you know, we have about 11% that said, hey, never should we be doing that. It definitely should look at doing that. And so Ideate Explorer is one of the products that can help you with that, not just from addressing warnings, but having a look at other categories as well. All right, this is great. All right, so let's go ahead and move forward. I'm going to go ahead and hide this poll and get back to, let's see, that looks like it hid. All right, so Richard and I are briefly going to talk about a couple of questions that actually came through the registration, and then we'll go ahead and address some questions from the audience as well. So Richard's going to actually talk about the first one here about how do you copy Revit sheets. And then this actually, I think, the next one that I'm going to be demoing here kind of can go hand in hand with the presentation that that Tang did on, you know, creating these unplaced sheets. Well, what if we have some views and we want to place those viewports on sheets? And this was a question from Joel. So I'll be giving a brief demo on that. So Richard, I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing my screen here, and I'm going to let you go ahead and take the reins and give your demo.
Okay. For some reason, I think you might have to actually make me presenter.
I could do
for
that
some reason, it's gray. I don't know why.
Yeah, no worries. Let me go ahead and do this real quickly. Let me just get the list here. And Richard, I am going to make you the presenter, and you should be able to present. So
yeah. All right. I think my screen is showing, right?
Yep.
Yeah, and I wanted to mention that Joel asked the question about inserting views in the question panel. So I said we're going to get to that in just a moment. So this is Revit 2021, just to let people know. But we support the last 4 releases of Revit, so it's the same whether you're using Revit 2018, 19, 20, or 21. So the question was asked about, well, how do we copy a sheet, right? So I'm going to come down over here to the project browser. You can see that I have sheets over here to the left. And, you know, the sheet that I'm on is this Z.7. And maybe I want to go to this coordination view. So I'm going to double click here to open up that particular sheet. And everyone knows in Revit, you can right click and you can duplicate, oops, this grayed out. So, you know, typically you can duplicate things by doing this, duplicate a view, but a sheet, it's not allowing you to do that. So, you know, we've developed a tool that's part of our Ideate apps called Id8 Clone. And so the sheet manager, the align, the clone, the view creator, they all kind of work together, but I thought I'd just do this one, which was Id8 Clone. So Id8 Clone, for those of you that maybe are not familiar with that term, clone means copy or duplicate. So if I'm on this sheet, this coordination sheet, I want to select clone, and the dialog will appear. And then this gives me the ability to, again, duplicate information. So I'm in a coordination sheet. I want to make it, you know, the next in the sequence would be Z.2. I'm going to, for my purposes, do structure. So I'm going to type that in. And down below then, it basically allows me to manipulate the viewports, whether I want to duplicate them or swap them one to another. So in this view that you see in the background here, I have a first floor coordination west. It has a scope box that is assigned to it. I would like to swap it with the first floor, since this is our structure, structural west. All right. And for the elevation signage, it's going to give me all the elevations that are interior elevations. But in this case, I actually want to swap it to an exterior or building elevation. So I would untick this show similar views. It's going to give me the ability to look at any of the views, right? So I actually have a building view here. If I come down here, elevation, west elevation for structure, I'm going to swap. And then a schedule or a legend can actually appear on multiple sheets. So if I do nothing, it's going to then duplicate this door hardware schedule and show it on the sheet. But that's not what I want. Since this is a structural sheet, I actually have I'm going to do this show similar views again, and I'm going to say that I have this structural compressive strength schedule that I want to show. This was brought in actually from Id8 Sticky, one of our other solutions. So if you are duplicating a view, you have rules down below here. So in this case, I'm swapping each of these three viewports. I'm swapping one for another. Now, if you've used this before and you are familiar with Id8 Clone, you may be looking and saying, well, what's this, Richard? What's this align plan views using model coordinates? I'm actually kind of doing a sneak peek tonight. I'm showing you a new feature that we are planning for our upcoming Q2 release. So it's the second quarter of 2021. And so what we're right now, when I'm going to go ahead and do this clone, and I'm going to keep it align plan views, which is the default method. So I'm going to say clone. And so by default, with that check mark on, or if you have an existing Id8 Clone that you're using, it is going to swap the view based on and align it based on the model coordinates, right? So in this case, it aligned as you see. Let me have my sheet still there. Let's say done. You see Z.1, this plan here is aligned perfectly with the Z.2, which is now the structure. And then it swapped, you know, the door hardware schedule with this minimum compressive strength schedule that I had from Id8 Sticky, and it swapped the building or the interior elevation with this building elevation. So, you know, we were asked, you know, this works great when you've got model coordinates that are, in this case, I have the same scope box, and I'm basically showing, in this case, the west elevation. But there are times where you may have unit plans, like maybe apartments or, you know, sort of a particular, I guess the unit plan is probably the best description, where you might want to center them on the sheet. So in this case, if I were to select and come down here and say, let's go over here to my sheet manager, and I would like to create a couple of the new sheets. So let's go over to my floor plans here. And let's just say in this case, I want to do plumbing east and west. So I'm going to do control. And I'm going to do the same thing, mechanical east and west. And I'm going to select that I want to right click and create sheets. So I'm now creating sheets. This is the method that you can do with Ideate apps. It's not meant to replace BIM link at all, because as Tang showed, you're doing 300 or 400 at a time. This is more of, if you've got some views, you need to create some sheets sort of one at a time, you can do that. So what I have here is I can decide what I want to use as sort of the base. So I can say, like, I want this structure to be used as the base view. And I'm going to say, okay, that sounds good. Now there's this new check mark that says align plan views. So what will happen is it will use the X and Y model coordinates. And so if I have an east and a west, what will happen is my west will be off the sheet. But if I untick this, it's now going to use the centroid of the viewport to align that. So it's now just a different method. So we're introducing a different method to align the plan viewports. And that is the centroid of the viewport as opposed to the model coordinates. So I think that's a nice option that people have asked us for, and so we're going to be able to support that. So now that I have those created here, I can then select on, let's say, the sheets that I created. And there you see that if I double click here and open those up, I'm just going to open up a couple of them. You can see that, what it did is, in this case, it still went off the sheet a little bit, but it's aligned based on the viewport, as opposed to if I was using X and Y model coordinates, it would be since it was the west elevation, it would be way off the sheet to the right. So it's really, like I said, a nice way to be able to control that. So a little bit of a preview. And then on the question, since Holger mentioned it, and I'm going to get to you in a second here, Sash, is that if we come over here to this view, Holger asked a question beforehand, which I thought was a really good one, where if we go over here to Ideate Explorer, and the question was, can you have a list when you're doing the warnings of the people that are working on the warnings, or that maybe have, as we know here, like in this case, there is some information about the element, right? When I kind of drill down, it's basically saying that it was last updated by myself. And in this particular model, actually, everything was created by me and last updated by me. But if we did have a situation where we wanted to highlight, let's say, just the 16 elements, that highlighted walls overlap, when I go and I click on this, I've actually selected those 16 elements. So when I come over here to explore, I can switch over to my current selection. And so that will show me that there were 16 warnings, but they involved 30 walls. And these are the 30 walls that are impacted by that particular warning. Then I could come over here to query, and I could get a list of last updated by, right? So in this case, last updated by, they're all going to be Richard. Oh, actually, there's one. Oh, yeah, Venti Dark Roast. That was one I selected. So if I wanted to find the one warning of the Venti Dark Roast, I could select on that, right? And I can see where that is in my model and go, double click and access it. So that, let's say I've been assigned, or not assigned, but I'm responsible for that particular wall that has that warning that's overlapping with another piece of geometry. So I thought that was a really good question that Holger asked, is could we identify warnings based on the person that last updated them or last created them? And so what I'd like to do now, I think, is switch over to you, Sash, because I think you had that other question and you wanted to go through that particular workflow.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and this is the one that came from Joel Ocampo. All right, so go ahead when you get a chance and make me a presenter. All right, thank you, sir. And I'm going to share my screen so you guys should see it here in just a moment. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and address Joel's Joel's question here about can we insert viewports via an XY value. So I'm going to switch over here real quickly to my Revit model. And you can see here in my Revit model, I have just a few sheets here. And we can also see I have the sheet shown up in my project browser. They don't have any plan views associated with them. And there are a few sheets over here that do. And so the question is how can we actually show these or get these viewports on the sheets. So kind of going back to like what Tang had done, where he created a whole bunch of sheets using BIMlink. Well, let's just say maybe you are working on a project together with other consultants, and maybe you have an architectural consultant, another one's mechanical consultant, and the architectural's got the views on the sheets, and maybe you want to kind of be able to get your viewports in alignment or kind of in the same place. Well, you can actually get the XY coordinate data from one model and kind of input that information into a spreadsheet and bring that information into your model to actually place those views. I'm going to start fresh here. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go to New. And one of the things I want to point out to you is if you include, the files and subfolders, you'll see a list of new creation elements here. And these are kind of some project setup stuff. We also do have a project standards subfolder right here, which actually, in this case, don't confuse that the project standards here don't actually have all of those settings in there. So just kind of keep in mind where this information is located. If you come up here, you can find it right in this list over here. But one of them here is this viewports create new. And this allows you to put or place unplaced views on specified sheets. It does require the view name and view type and sheet number properties. That way it knows where to place these views. And of course, the family and type for the viewport is recommended, but is not required. So something to keep in mind here. Now, normally when you click it and go to next, what we've done here is we've kind of filtered, other view types in here. So you're not getting a list of kind of some of your existing views here. And just to kind of show you how you could maybe extract this information from one project and kind of bring it into another. If I came over the filters here, we're filtering where any view type has a legend and a plan. And if I actually just remove these filters over here, you'll see that I'm actually just getting a listing of the 3 sheets over here that actually have views. And the reason why I remove those filters is I just wanted to show you, some of the parameter data that appears here, like the element ID and the family and type. And when we talk about the family and type, we're talking about where it shows up, in the project browser. And then the view name and the sheet number, the family and type, meaning, what viewport type it's using. And then you can see here, the X and Y coordinates. So in this case, it's 507 by 648 millimeters, from the corner of the title block. And if I had this, let's say, in an architectural file, and I wanted to place my mechanical views on certain sheets using certain view types, I could, in theory, use this information and change it a little bit so that I can pull it in and actually drop those views on my sheets. So real quickly, what I wanted to show you here is what this would normally look like. So normally what I would do is I would export this blank link out to Excel and fill it in and then pull it in to generate the new views. So essentially I would go to New, I would come over to the Viewports Create New, I would hit Next, I would take this information, hit Done, and then export it out. Okay. Now when I export it out, it will be blank with the exception of the headers. So here's an example of one that I filled out. And basically these headers came out blank. Okay. And then basically what I do for the element ID is I say new. So what was, demoed earlier by Tang was Tang basically came in and actually created new sheets by putting the word new in here, right? And then specified the sheet name and sheet number and then filled in those other parameters and that custom data, right? But in this case, I'm saying new for my viewports that I want placed on my sheets. I want to use this this organization category where it's located. it's this view name. So I'm telling BIMLink what the family type is and what the view name is, what sheet number it goes on, what family title or a type I wanted to use in terms of the title, and then where to position it based on the corner of the title block. Okay. So if I have this information, I can use this to pull it in. So I'm going to go ahead and close this. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go ahead and import it. And pay attention here. It takes a moment to do this, but I'm going to go to import. And I'm going to bring in this one. I just changed it to the name called import just to remind me to use it for importing. But you can see the preview here. I'm going to go to import. And what's going to happen, it takes a few moments because Revit's got to do some thinking. And you can see down here in the corner, it's generating the graphics. But we're identifying the existing views that exist in my project. It's not creating brand new views. It's taking the existing views, looking at what category it belongs to, what the view type is, and it's going to then place them on the sheet for me. So that's kind of what I'm telling it to do, and it's going to place it based on that coordinate data. So you see here in a moment, and again, it's a little slow because Revit's slow at bringing in this data. But you can see over here when I go to import, those views then showed up, right? And so, again, these views already existed in my project browser. They existed under here. They were located here. Here are actually the 3 that I brought in just for level 1. But I knew what the coordinates were, based on this corner, because I found it from another project where I wanted the layout to be exactly the same. And then I said, hey, what's the family and type here? And in this case, it was using the title with line parameter data. So it is one way that you can absolutely do this, especially if you're working on projects with consultants that are very similar. You can absolutely use that method if you want to. Otherwise, you can use the sheet manager tool to help you place views on sheets, and then you can use the align tool to help you align them in a certain spot. And if you want to make copies of the sheets and swap out views, kind of like what Richard was showing you earlier, you could use Clone for that. All right, what I'd like to do here is just give the audience here the ability to unmute themselves. So I'm going to go ahead and give everybody permission to unmute. So feel free, if you want to ask a question aloud, feel free to unmute yourself. Richard, are there any questions from the questions panel that you think maybe we should go ahead and address?
That is a good question. I guess, Brenda had asked just about like renaming parameters. And so just in general, I just wanted to say that BIMLink's not really designed to rename or manage parameters. We're managing the data behind the parameters. So when it comes to like, you could, for instance, create new shared parameters within Revit and then load information or transfer the data using BIMLink from like the old parameter name to the new parameter. We actually have a blog post on that. But for actually renaming the parameters, the question was, would BIMLink work for that? And I think the best is to do that within native Revit.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah. Once you have the parameters created, whether they're shared parameters or project parameters, then we can manage the data within those parameters very easily with BIMLink.
Okay. Hey everyone, this is Radu. I want to say locating viewports consistently on sheets was one of the most important things to acquire with the tool in terms of production also. So that's a big one for us.
Fantastic. Yeah, that's great. That's great to hear. Yeah, especially if you're a multi-discipline firm and you're basically saying, look, I have a floor plan. Now I need a mechanical plan. I need an electrical plan and a plumbing plan, and I want them placed in the same spot. You can absolutely, export the data from one model and then take that data, and you have to make some changes, make sure that you're assigning it the right, a viewport type and everything that pertains to the model you're bringing it in with. But once you do that, you can say, okay, BIMLink, pull this information in and place those views on the sheets, which I'm assuming is the same thing that Joel wanted to do. It's probably from one discipline to another, which is why, he wanted to accomplish that. If it's all in the same project, you could certainly use Ideate apps to help you with that. And, Align is a great tool to get these, views aligned in the same spot. So it's good to hear. Thanks, Radu. Appreciate you letting us know.
And I'll make a little plug. We do try to document a lot of these workflows from customers. 99.9% of them are directly from customers. And so we have a video under BIMLink. If you go to the BIMLink video page, it's called Project Setup. And that Project Setup video talks about creating new views, new sheets, new levels. Yep, exactly. You have it all queued up, huh?
I have it all queued up, yeah. Yep. So, as Richard said, he did a great job on this video showing you project setup. So, this is it right here if you want to watch this video.
Well, I know we're about at only 1 minute away from the top of the hour, Sash. So I know we wanted to be very respectful of people's time. I very much appreciate everyone joining us today. At the end of the presentation, there will be a very short survey. And of course, as we said along, you can, or throughout the presentation, you can always type questions into or you could actually email us and type a question in if you didn't get something answered. And this is a good point, Sash, that you're showing.
Yeah, yep, absolutely. Yeah, so be sure, just to remind everybody here, if you check, again, in each product if you want to for updates, make sure that your software is up to date. We try not to do updates on this weekly basis kind of thing. We do them occasionally. So be sure to check for updates, because sometimes updates address small issues, or we just added new features like what we did with Style Manager at the end of last year. We added, 6 new categories to it. So that was a big update. And, if you do have feature requests, right, be sure you can, submit it right within the software if you want to, or go right to our website and submit a feature or issue request, and we'll definitely get back to you. So we're very good, about that. We want to hear from you if you have any ideas. We got some ideas today, even from our questions panel, things that we want to go back and log in our system as an idea. And even, having a conversation with Holger today about warnings and some ideas that he had. We will definitely want to make sure we get that information logged as well. So be sure to submit that. And again, you can find us at ideatesoftware.com. We'll hang out here for a couple of minutes. If anybody does have any questions, again, everybody's got permission to unmute themselves. So if you want to, ask a question aloud, feel free to do that. And there is a brief survey at the end when you close out. If you can take just 1 minute and fill it out, that would be very helpful to us. We'd like to hear from you. So I think there's a few questions on that.
Yeah, and specifically, one of the things that we are doing right now, or we're planning for our Q2 update release, that'll be probably in May or June, is we're going to be delivering additional languages. We're planning on 6 languages, including English, so 5 plus English. And so we are looking for people that are using the Chinese version of Revit. So we thought maybe there might be some people on this call. It's using the default Chinese version of Revit, so that you're not just using the English version. You're actually using I think it's simplified Chinese. Is that what Revit defines as the language selection? And so we'd just like to hear from you if you are using that as sort of the default language for Revit, because we haven't found too many of our customers yet that are using that as their default language.
Yep. Perfect.
So that's why that question is there. If you kind of look at it and go, well, why are they asking us that question?
There, yeah. Yep. We're trying to gauge get some information from folks if they are using that version.
Yeah, we found really good examples of people, with German and Spanish, and of course we've had French for a little while. So that's the simplified Chinese has been one of the more difficult ones for us to find good examples of users that are using that version of Revit. So I want to thank Holger and Tang one last time. I really appreciate you taking the time and the effort to put the criteria and the information together for this presentation. Hopefully it's been very interactive. We're going to continue to do these online User groups, probably about once a quarter is what we're planning. So, you know, we do have another one that's planned for May timeframe. Or we actually, it is on the books for May. I can't remember the exact date, but you can go to our website and find the exact date for this, you know, the Asia Pacific region. Again, one for Americas and one for Europe as well. So we're going to continue to do these types of things and try to be very interactive and have a lot of customer examples during the presentations.